Nyalche Chembo Toto Ningmi Shang, Donen Manam Chembo, Nyalcheta, Lankara Dargam Santo, Shermat, Tumba Turje Chanla Ki Shomsar, Nishan Roar Zerni Jangamsa, Jawar Tuji Shanlo, Yelaman, Jigme Panzo Jala, Soran, Gonjit Tobam Pora Shinjilo, Gonjit Tobam Pora Shinjilo, Gonjit Tobam Pora Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Now we're going to study the Shurangama Sutra. In the Shurangama Sutra, earlier the Venerable Ananda asked some questions, and then the Buddha continued to answer him, the content we're currently discussing. Earlier it was said, Ananda, you understand the principle of neither arising from causes nor naturally arising quite well, but you still don't understand our so-called perfectly aware luminous mind, whether it arises through combination or not through combination. You don't understand this. Yesterday we also made an analysis of this. If Ananda believes that the bodhicitta, that is to say, our awareness arises through combination, this is unreasonable. If it arises through combination, then an analysis was made using combination with light. After analysis, whether combining with light or combining with darkness or combining with space or combining with obstruction, none of these can produce this awareness. This principle has already been explained. Then today we continue to explain that this awareness again arises through combination. Now when this is explained in the sutra, this combination, the first part is he, meaning harmony. The second part is he, meaning union or cooperation. First, from the aspect of combination, it was refuted separately. Then from the aspect of non-combination, it was also refuted separately. In Chinese, when he and he are combined together, it has one meaning, but when separated, he and he have different meanings. In this way, here it refutes through four levels. First, how is this he, harmony? Then how is the latter, he, union? Then later also separating he and he to refute in this way. Now the meaning of he and he, the first he, meaning harmony, including Tongli and Master Uyi, many great masters, including Wenling when they explain. They say the first he is actually like water and earth when combined together, they become mud. The first he is like this, that is to say, everything mixed together, this is called he. Actually, looking at it, it all seems like the latter meaning of mixing together is better. But when we generally understand literally he, meaning harmony has this and that, also has the meaning of connection and relationship, then the latter he, meaning cooperation, has the meaning of joining together or coming together, gathering together. It has this meaning. But in many commentaries there is encompassing correspondence, completely encompassing, like a box covering something, or saying it has pervaded everywhere, everything is already covered. It might have this meaning. According to the Han region's interpretation method, it's like this. Then in the Tibetan Tripitaka, translated by the Chankyaku Tukhtu and others, the first he is translated as contact, Then the latter he, dependence, that latter he, meaning union, is translated with the meaning of dependence. Now in our analysis process below, actually many reasoning methods are basically consistent. However, internally there are also some different logical paths. Some of their reasoning methods are also slightly different. So then, below yesterday we explained that if our luminous mind bodhicitta arises from the previous he, this is unreasonable. This principle has already been explained. Then next, once again, Ananda, your wondrous pure seeing essence, now does it combine with light? Does it combine with darkness? Does it combine with openness? Does it combine with obstruction? Below is the second level of analysis. Now this second level of analysis is the same. The method of analysis is also the same. Your so-called wondrous pure seeing essence, whether wondrous pure seeing essence or bodhicitta, or our so-called seeing nature awareness. Now this thing, actually you just said earlier that it seems to arise from combination. Now if it arises from combination, does it arise from combining with light Or does it arise from combining with darkness? Or does it arise from combining with openness? Or does it arise from combining with obstruction? Now, through analyzing these four objects, when we conduct this analysis, we basically understand which dharma this luminous awareness combines with to arise. Now, first, if it combines with light, because we have four choices. Among these four choices, if you select the first one, if my wondrous, luminous awareness arises from combining with light, when it comes to darkness, the light characteristic has already disappeared. This seeing would not combine with darkness. How then could you see darkness? If you say your awareness arises from combining with light, then when you perceive darkness, because your awareness arises from combining with light, when you perceive darkness, the light characteristic will definitely be extinguished, because darkness and light are mutually contradictory. It's impossible for darkness to exist where there is light, or for light to exist where there is darkness. This is impossible. So in this way, when you perceive darkness, the light characteristic will definitely be extinguished. In this way, this seeing would not combine with darkness at this time, because the light characteristic is already gone. When the light characteristic is already gone, then this seeing should not combine with darkness. Since it doesn't combine with darkness, how then could you see darkness? Then you cannot say you see darkness. If it doesn't combine with darkness, how can it be seeing darkness? You shouldn't say it's seeing darkness. If it only combines with light, then you would always see light. There shouldn't be any darkness. So for people with seeing nature, there would be no darkness at night, no need for flashlights, street lights. Nothing would be needed because you combine with light. Either when seeing darkness, light must depart. This is also mentioned below. How could there be seeing darkness? There shouldn't be if when seeing darkness. If you say, although it arises from combining with light, but there are also times when you see darkness, then if you see darkness, it does not combine with darkness, but combines with light. If you say that although I see darkness, I don't combine with the seeing, I'm still together with light, I haven't divorced from light either, always together with light, always together with it, you should not see light. At that time, you shouldn't see light. Why? Because when you see darkness, you should combine with darkness. If when you see darkness, you still see light, then this is unreasonable. Because just now, when seeing light, seeing darkness, it's like light hasn't disappeared. So when you see darkness, you also shouldn't see light, because darkness hasn't disappeared either. We can say this: since you don't see light, how can you combine with light? Understanding light is not darkness. If you acknowledge that indeed when seeing darkness you don't see light, then you can't say you combine with light. Much less can you say you understand this light, not having seen darkness. Even more shouldn't say this, because you haven't seen light at all. If you haven't seen light, there's nothing to say about combining with light. Then understanding light also cannot be said, because light and darkness, these two are completely mutually exclusive things. With mutually exclusive things, if you haven't seen true darkness, light also can't be explained clearly. When you see light, does darkness exist or not? If darkness exists, then light won't exist. So you haven't seen light. How can you combine with light? How can you understand light apart from darkness? Both of these are impossible. So analyzing with this kind of reasoning that darkness and openness and all forms of obstruction are likewise. Using this reasoning method, we can also say whether you combine with darkness, combine with openness, or combine with obstruction, all can be refuted with this method of examination, completely refuted. So Ananda, if you think your luminous mind combines with light, the four ways are also unreasonable, then combining with light the four ways explained yesterday are also unreasonable. This refutes from the positive side, because earlier Ananda didn't recognize whether luminous awareness arises from combination or not. Now the above analysis can refute what Ananda believed, that awareness arises from combining with light, has already been completely refuted. Next, arising from non-combination. If arising from non-combination, it's also through two aspects: examining from the previous he, examining from the latter he, examining from these two aspects. Ananda said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, as I contemplate this wondrous enlightened source." You see, each time awareness is mentioned here, different terms are used. When I think about it now, this wondrous enlightened mind, this wondrous luminous true mind with all conditions, dust and mental deliberations, is it not in combination? He said, my wondrous enlightened mind should be the external objects of form, sound, smell, taste, touch should be the five dusts, and also mental deliberation. Mental deliberation, when translated in Tibetan, is explained as mind, intellect, and consciousness. These three. In some commentaries, including in the Shurangama commentary with palm explanations, the consciousness minds of the six faculties, that is to say the six consciousness minds, are eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, mental consciousness. This aspect can also be explained. In general, Ananda believes his enlightened source, his seeing nature, depends on the external six objects and depends on the internal six consciousnesses through this non-combination. Does it arise through non-combination? Isn't it like this? He himself thinks it should arise through non-combination because the previous arising through combination now can no longer be established. In this way, he thinks, could it be that these arise from non-combination? It's not produced through combination with them, right? This is what he thinks. Then next, the Buddha begins to refute again. Earlier it was refuted using the first character he, then later using the other character he to refute. The method of refutation is also the same. The Buddha said, you now again say awareness is not in combination. I ask you again, this wondrous seeing essence that is not in combination, is it not in harmony with light? Is it not in harmony with darkness? Is it not in harmony with openness? Is it not in harmony with obstruction? Below, the Buddha tells the Venerable Ananda, you now feel, you now say this enlightened source, that is to say, the wondrous bodhicitta arises from non-combination. If it arises from non-combination, I will now begin to ask you this question. What kind of question? This subtle seeing essence you're now talking about, if it arises from non-combination, then does it harmonize with non-light? Or does it harmonize with non-darkness? Does it harmonize with non-openness or with non-obstruction? That is to say, if yours arises from non-combination, then that means it's not produced through combination. In this way, does it arise through combining with not light, or through combining with not darkness, or with not openness or not obstruction? These four aspects are used to pose questions. If it does not harmonize with light, then seeing and light must have a boundary. If you, Ananda, believe that my subtle awareness actually doesn't arise from harmonizing with light, it doesn't harmonize with light, but it still exists. It has no relationship with light, non-light harmony. If it's non-light harmony, then your seeing and light, that is to say, the seeing nature and the seen light, the external light, whether the sun or a lamp between this light, there must be a boundary. There should be a boundary line between them. There should be a boundary. The meaning of boundary is light is here, seeing is there, between light and seeing, because you say, my seeing nature doesn't harmonize with light. If it doesn't harmonize with light, you first need to know this light, otherwise, how would you know you don't harmonize with it? Since you need to know to not harmonize with light first, the boundary between seeing and light must definitely be stated. For example, when we say, this is not my territory, you know the boundary between your and his territory. If you don't know this, then you don't know how big your territory is or how big his territory is, so there must definitely be a boundary in between. There will definitely be this boundary. You should observe carefully, where is the light? Where is the seeing? In light, what constitutes the boundary? Then the Buddha asks him to continue. You observe in detail. When you observe, so you say you don't combine with light. If it's not light combination, use your own wisdom to observe which place is light's territory. Or the place of light, which place belongs to seeing, that is, the place of seen light, which place is your seeing's domain. When in light and when in seeing so, when in light, when in seeing, what is the boundary between you? What constitutes the boundary? between you two. Which parts belong to seeing, which parts belong to light, you must distinguish clearly. If you can't distinguish clearly and lump everything together, you say you don't harmonize with light. But where exactly is the light? If you don't even know this, how do you know it doesn't harmonize with seeing? So you must find out what place constitutes the boundary between you. If the boundary cannot be found, then the principle of harmony or non-harmony is impossible. You haven't even figured out what light is. How do you know you don't harmonize with it? Maybe you're completely harmonized, but you just haven't discovered it. This is possible. Below it says, Ananda. If within light's domain there is definitely no seer, then they don't contact each other. Since you don't know where light's characteristics are located, how can the boundary be established? He says, Ananda, if within light's domain there is definitely no seeing, you say light doesn't harmonize with me. If within light's domain there is no seeing, then light and seeing are actually separate entities. They don't contact each other at all. In this way, you don't know where light's characteristics are located. How would you know where this seeing, how would you know where light is located? You say light doesn't harmonize. If light doesn't harmonize, if within light your seeing has never been produced, how would you know light is not here? Because light and you are completely separate, like an eastern vase and a western vase. How would you know its location? In this way, how can the boundary be established? The boundary line between you, the boundary, how can you establish it? How can you set it up? It's very difficult to establish. So everyone knows if it doesn't harmonize with light, it's refuted through this method. That darkness and openness and all forms of obstruction are likewise. Now through this method and the remaining ones, not harmonizing with darkness, not harmonizing with openness, not harmonizing with obstruction, also observe in this way, all can be completely refuted. This was just about non-harmony, the first non-harmony content, refuted in this way. Then below is the second non-union. Here in Chinese it's like this, I just explained. In Tibetan the first he is analyzed as contact, the latter he, meaning cooperation, dependence. In Tibetan, this can also work whether it depends or not, whether it contacts or not. All these great masters' translations should also have their special meanings. Below, the fourth method of observation, refuting non-union. Again, if the wondrous seeing essence is not in combination. If you, Ananda, think this wondrous seeing essence also arises from non-combination, this he is the latter he. In this way, is it not united with light? Is it not united with darkness? Is it not united with openness? Is it not united with obstruction? If you say this seeing essence arises from non-combination, then does it arise from non-light union? Or does it arise from non-darkness union? Or does it arise from non-openness union? Or non-obstruction union? Observe in this way, if not united with light, if you acknowledge it's not produced through light union. This he, I don't distinguish very clearly, maybe because my Chinese level is relatively low. It seems this observation method is slightly different. The meanings of these two characters are not very clear. The way these great masters explain it seems this latter mixing he is generally earth, water and mud. This seems more appropriate for the latter, but this should have their reasoning. If you think your luminous awareness, luminous seeing nature is not united with light, then I ask you, then seeing and light are contrary in nature, like the ear with light, completely not in contact. If this is the case, your seeing and light are not united, right? In this way, your seeing nature and light's nature, seeing nature, and the object light are contrary in nature, completely different natures, two different essential natures, like contrary and perverse, mutually exclusive, like horns if one exists, the other absolutely doesn't. This is called contrary. If you don't unite with light, then your seeing nature and light are completely like in some of our Tibetan analogies. If the torma is thrown to the west, the ghost comes from the east, because originally using torma to make offerings to him would satisfy him. But if we get it wrong, it's like going south when you want to go north, completely unable to solve the problem. This meaning, in this way, Your light and mind are completely two separate entities, just like our ear faculty, with the clear form that is the eye's object, like bright form. Because our ear faculty can only receive sound, it's impossible for external form dharmas, their colors. This is equivalent to your faculty being completely different, like ear faculty and bright form, completely not in contact. These two can never interact with each other or have the opportunity to recognize objects. This is impossible. Seeing doesn't even know where light's characteristics are located. How can you distinguish the principle of union or non-union? If this is the case, your seeing doesn't know where light is at all, because just now they are two different natures, like Eastern Mountain and Western Mountain. In this way, your seeing cannot understand this light at all, where light's characteristics are located. In this way, how can you distinguish? How can you distinguish? Whether your seeing nature unites or doesn't unite with light, this principle definitely cannot be distinguished. How can you distinguish clearly? How can you discern? How can you distinguish clearly? Whether this light and mind unite with it or light and mind don't unite with it, how can this principle be understood? There's no way to understand it. This is his final observation method, that darkness and openness and all forms of obstruction are likewise. Now, with this observation method above the others, remaining non-darkness union, non-openness union, non-obstruction, if you think this way, it's the same using the observation method above. You can completely understand this principle. So above this, the Venerable Ananda earlier, he doubted awareness arising from causes and conditions, then doubted natural arising, later doubted arising from combination, then doubted arising from non-combination. But in this way, our bodhicitta luminous awareness is not produced from causes and conditions, is also not naturally produced, is also not produced from combination, is also not produced from non-combination. Through this observation method above, we finally also know from truly existing causes and conditions, luminous awareness cannot be produced. Everyone should also know this point. I also mentioned earlier why in the Shurangama Sutra, luminous awareness is constantly refuted through various methods. In this way is it that when great masters awaken this kind of luminous mind-seeing nature never exists. It's also not like this. Luminous mind-seeing nature does exist, but when examined through reasoning, truly existing, seeing nature or seeing nature that withstands examination never exists. If it existed, it would be no different from some heretical teachings, because whether inner dharmas or outer dharmas, all dharmas of samsara and nirvana are actually unattainable in ultimate reality, and conventionally like dreams and illusions. If you understand this principle, then all the analysis above is all very meaningful. Otherwise, studying the Shurangama Sutra, you might finally feel, wow, maybe if I realize the nature of mind, it's never established. Maybe it doesn't exist. In this way, it's no different from materialist views. There's no difference. Everyone should also understand this aspect, because when studying and contemplating, if you don't do well, it's easy to go astray. Some people have some wisdom, but if this wisdom doesn't reach the ultimate in the end, you might slander or generate wrong views yourself. This is still helpful. Truly understanding the Dharma, meaning the ultimate profound principles, has no meaning at all. In this way, it's particularly regrettable and meaningless. Now, below, after this observation above, we finally still arrive at conventionally, dharmas are like dreams and illusions, but actually our bodhicitta wondrous awareness also exists. This principle, Ananda, you still don't understand that all floating dust and illusory transformative appearances arise where they are and are extinguished where they are. These are illusory false appearances whose nature is truly the wondrous, enlightened, luminous essence. This passage is still very important. Finally, the Buddha tells Ananda, you still don't understand some things. What don't you understand? Because from the questions above, we can also see some of Ananda's level. You don't understand that all floating dust, all myriad dharmas are actually like illusions, like magical transformations. Transformation means magical transformation, and the previous illusion means magical arts. Magical arts and magical transformations, the same. These two should be in Tibetan. They're also separated. In Tibetan, the floating dust here here means conventional dharmas. This is also fine. All conventional dharmas are like illusions, like magical arts. Now they arise where they are and are extinguished where they are. So at any time when causes and conditions are complete, they will arise. And extinguished where they are also when causes and conditions are incomplete, they will be extinguished. These illusory false appearances can be called appearances, but the nature of these appearances is actually truly the wondrous, enlightened, luminous essence. Everyone should also. We've studied the Vimalakarti Sutra, we've studied the Ratnagotra Vibhaga. You should understand, on one hand, everything is like dreams and illusions, but on the other hand, the essence of Tathagata Garbha indeed also exists in a clear and unmoving way, because just now everything arises and ceases randomly. But these illusory appearances, because of this reason, conventionally we can call them like dreams and illusions, but their essence is actually also unmoving suchness, this principle. When we study some tantric principles, it's quite clear to understand. It's precisely because of this that in Master Bodhidharma's Bloodstream Sermon it says, "Therefore know that conditioned dharmas are like dreams and illusions. If you don't urgently seek a teacher, you'll waste a lifetime." He says conditioned dharmas are like dreams and illusions. These conditioned dharmas are just like dreams and illusions. If you don't urgently seek a teacher, you'll waste a lifetime. If you don't quickly rely on a spiritual teacher, you'll waste a lifetime. Yet Buddha nature itself exists. Without a teacher, one will never understand clearly. Although each of us possesses Buddha nature, but without relying on a good teacher's guidance, we can never understand it clearly. This is indeed very important. Some of us are fortunate to encounter the Mahayana Dharma in this lifetime, fortunate to encounter Mahayana spiritual teachers, so we come to know that all conditioned dharmas are also impermanent, and we ourselves originally possess the Tathagata Garbha. If we don't understand these principles indeed, when could we ever attain liberation? This is extremely difficult. So this principle, I hope some of our Dharma friends should take these many Chan Masters' awakening passages and often write them down. Here it says, "All floating dust and illusory transformative appearances arise where they are and are extinguished where they are. These are illusory false appearances whose nature is truly the wondrous, enlightened, luminous essence." In the past, there was also a Chan master who also awakened through relying on this passage. It should be in the new continuation of eminent monks' biographies, where there's one called Chan Master Rusong. When he was born, his mother had a dream where it seemed a monk gave her a kasaya robe. She had a very good dream. Later, he became a monk from a young age. After ordination, when he was small, he relied on Master Lianqi of the Ming Dynasty. Later, he began reading the Sutra of Perfect Enlightenment. When reading the Sutra of Perfect Enlightenment, there was a passage he didn't understand. He thought that Tathagata's teaching seemed very difficult to understand through intellectual analysis. So he went into retreat for 1,000 days, that is, more than 3 years. He went into retreat for more than 3 years. After the retreat, actually, he still didn't understand it so well. Later, he continued to rely on Master Zibo. In between, he also heard from one called Master Shuelang, where he studied this Shurangama Sutra. When relying on Master Zibo, he took this passage just now from all floating dust to wondrous, enlightened, luminous essence and inquired about it with Master Zibo. In the process of inquiry, the Master scolded him severely. When first scolded severely, he continued to ask. When scolded again the second time, the biography doesn't make it very clear, but at that time he should have already awakened. Later, he began prostrating to Master Zibo. Then he said all the Chan school teachings are not understood through discriminating mind, not understood through discriminating mind. Later, he also had some other stories also mentioned in the records of Pure Land saints. In his final years, he began writing a verse, then put down his brush and passed away, right then manifesting perfect passing and rebirth in the Pure Land. there's also this. So in his early years, he studied the Shurangama Sutra and relied on Chan teachings. Then in his later years, he relied on Pure Land practice to be reborn in the Pure Land. So in his biography, he also awakened through relying on this passage. So I think when we study the Shurangama Sutra, sometimes encountering these profound teachings, although our spiritual capacity is different from these great masters, maybe we don't feel anything at all. But regardless, the previous great masters were all like this. Some teachings that previous masters awakened through, we should also often read them, just like His Holiness. He believed that through direct showing of the nature of mind, it's impossible not to realize through it. So he would definitely realize. When he continuously recited it 10,000 times, he realized the nature of mind. Then Mipham Rinpoche's prayer he recited 1,000,000 times. So just like His Holiness felt at that time, that relying on it would definitely lead to realization. If we have this kind of confidence, these texts are not ordinary texts. When worldly people read a newspaper or a novel, feel there are important parts, they underline or mark them below. There are such situations, thus including the 5 aggregates and 6 entrances from the 12 sense spheres to the 18 elements. The 5 aggregates and the 6 entrances, what we often call the 6 entrances, the 6 sense faculties. Then the 12 sense spheres, among the 12 sense spheres also, the 6 faculties and 6 objects are called the 12 sense spheres. Then regarding the 18 elements, the 6 entrances, 6 faculties, 6 consciousnesses, all these when causes and conditions combine, there is illusory arising. When causes and conditions separate, there is illusory cessation. So all these conditioned dharmas, including what we discussed earlier from the 5 aggregates to the 18 elements, all these dharmas, when their causes and conditions combine, these dharmas will arise when their causes and conditions are kind of illusory. Chang Shui explains as nominal, fabricated, that is to say, their fabricated combination of causes and conditions. At this time there is a rising. Then when the fabricated combination of causes and conditions has already been extinguished, they will disappear. So all myriad dharmas are like this. You especially cannot know that arising, cessation, going and coming are fundamentally the Tathagata Garbha, eternally abiding, wondrous, luminous, unmoving, perfectly complete, wondrous, true suchness nature we don't know. That fundamentally coming, going, arising, cessation, these dharmas are fundamentally within the Tathagata Garbha, eternally abiding and unmoving. Its luminosity and purity exist in a way that is without separation or combination, always unmoving suchness within the true suchness nature that pervades and perfects everything. Within true suchness it is like this. We don't know this. But if we think that within the eternal nature of true suchness we can seek going and coming, delusion and awakening, birth and death in this way, we will attain nothing at all. Absolutely nothing can be attained in the true Tathagata Garbha or true reality if we seek truly existing coming and going, truly existing awakening, truly existing delusion, truly existing birth, death, nirvana, and so forth. It's like in space, trying to find some things, absolutely nothing can be obtained. Precisely because of this, the Lankavatara Sutra also says, habitual tendencies delude and turn the mind. From this, the 3 realms appear. Habitual tendencies delude and turn the mind because habitual tendencies cause delusion. Turning into this mind, then, from this, the 3 realms appear. From this, the 3 realms manifest. Originally, there is no arising and also no cessation. Originally, there is no arising, also no cessation. This principle should be unattainable in true reality. We often say that in the ultimate sense, everything transcends the 4 extremes and 8 elaborations. Those who have studied Madhyamaka understand this very clearly, but although you might sometimes realize this level, we also cannot destroy our conventional merit. I see that also in the new continuation of eminent monks' biographies. There's one called Master Rizhao. He also had the karma to become a monk from childhood. Later there was one called Master Tongji. He heard the Shurangama Sutra from him. Then after hearing the Shurangama Sutra, He relied on him for 10 years, then had an awakening. He should have awakened through relying on the Shurangama Sutra. But after awakening, he didn't put everything down. Just because he awakened, he began using his own blood and wrote the 80-volume Avatamsaka and the 7-volume Lotus Sutra. I feel that these previous great masters were truly remarkable. Then after writing these blood sutras, he continued prostrating to the stupa of relics, probably the Buddha relic stupa built by King Ashoka. Then he burned fingers as offerings to the Buddha, burned 2 fingers, after using blood to write the Avatamsaka Sutra and Lotus Sutra, then began burning 2 fingers as offerings to the Buddha. After this, he seemed to be the abbot of a monastery. In this monastery, over 8 years, he began constructing the monastery. When constructing the monastery, its mountain gate, river embankment, and Buddha recitation hall and meditation hall, and 70 dormitory rooms of a certain length and so forth. He used 8 years. When everything was completed and finished, suddenly a fierce wind came and destroyed all the buildings from 8 years of work completely. Last year, when we were building at our monastery later in winter, there was also wind that destroyed a part. But fortunately, at that time, it wasn't everything. Although it wasn't 8 years of work, but for Chan Master Rizhao, his 8 years of effort was completely destroyed. During this period, the master outwardly showed some sadness. Later, he again began rebuilding for 3 years. After 3 years of rebuilding, he should have completed it. But what was most remarkable about him, no matter what happened to him, he recited the 10 volumes of the Shurangama Sutra daily without interruption. This was what was truly remarkable about him. I feel many great masters in Han China in the past, some lay practitioners and monastics who recited sutras daily were quite remarkable. Some recited the Lotus Sutra every day. Some recited the Vimalakarti Sutra, some recited the Shurangama Sutra, those who recite the Shurangama Sutra. Now there are also some in monasteries, though not many indeed, there are still some now. But what we regret is that in recent times no one has taught the Shurangama Sutra. This time, I don't know when we'll finish transmitting it. After finishing the transmission, I also hope everyone should make aspirations to propagate this Shurangama Sutra in various places. In the future, when there are opportunities again in various places to make the teachings of the Shurangama Sutra begin to flourish, this should be in various places. Everyone should, including printing books and then beginning. Now it's still relatively simple, not like in the past, relying on woodblock printing. Of course, our academy now has quite many books, don't print them and then send them to us. Otherwise, our handling would be difficult too. Now, there aren't many people either. Due to the pandemic, there aren't many people. Our handling of Dharma texts would be difficult too, but you yourselves can distribute them freely in Han regions and then teach this. Because in this Shurangama Sutra, the most profound part is the first 2 volumes. These 2 volumes should be finished in these 2 days. Generally speaking, its most profound part. If some Mara kings are unhappy and create obstacles, the beginning is relatively intense. Then after passing through, after the 2 volumes, basically, it flows smoothly. What I wanted to say just now was about Chan Master Rizhao, what he did in his life. He said that through relying on the Shurangama Sutra, he already had awakening, already had enlightenment. But later he still continued like this, so His Holiness was also like this in the past. Don't stop accumulating merit just because you have realization. You must live to learn until old. This is very important. Everyone should also. Sometimes when we study treatises, we know all myriad dharmas are non-arising, non-ceasing, non-coming, non-going. It seems we already understand this principle, but actually we cannot be satisfied with this. We should still continue to study. Just like Chan Master Rizhao just now, he wrote so many blood sutras, also burned fingers as offerings to the Buddha, and constructed monasteries. His own recitation was never interrupted, no matter what he encountered, never interrupted. Every day reciting 10 volumes of the Shurangama Sutra. Look at many of us, especially someone like me, me with relatively poor Chinese reading ability, maybe reciting the Shurangama Sutra once from morning to night, I don't know, doing nothing else, just reciting the Shurangama Sutra once might be very difficult in one day. But indeed, with skill and confidence, it should also be possible. The principles above have already been explained. Then below, how are the five aggregates fundamentally the Tathagata Garbha, wondrous true suchness, nature? Then below begins explaining the five aggregates, analyzing the essence of the five aggregates. How can we say the five aggregates are wondrous true suchness, nature? Isn't it that in the Guhyagarbha Tantra, the five aggregates are the five Buddhas? Now, the principle that the five aggregates are the five Buddhas is actually also explained here, because the five aggregates actually don't have any truly existing thing. This is called Buddha. Below explains this principle. Now below, if the five aggregates are the five Buddhas first, the form aggregate is determined to be empty, then the feeling aggregate, perception aggregate, consciousness aggregate. In this chapter, I remember all five aggregates are explained. This volume, the second volume, ends here. So today we can analyze the form aggregate. Here it is explained like this. Ananda, for example, there is a person who with pure eyes observes a clear bright sky, seeing only clear emptiness with absolutely nothing there. Here he wants to give an analogy to explain the form aggregate among the five aggregates. The form aggregate actually has no true characteristics. This is the main principle being explained. How does he explain it? For example, there is a person whose eyes are clear and bright, sparkling clear, pure, without any cataracts. Pure, clear eyes. Then with these pure eyes he observes the vast clear sky. When observing this vast clear sky, apart from the endless clear sky, there is nothing else. What he sees using his own pure eyes to observe the pure sky, there is nothing else. Like the autumn sky in our Tibetan region, which is also extremely clear, without any mist, without any clouds, without any other obstructions, this person, for no particular reason, keeps his eyes unmoving. Staring until fatigue develops, then sees illusory flowers in the empty space along with all kinds of chaotic false appearances. This person, for no reason, keeps unmoving. In some commentaries it's for no reason whatsoever, but in Tibetan, for no reason means very naturally, ordinarily very naturally, without anything else particular, continuously keeping his eyes focused, unmoving on the sky, not doing anything else, very naturally, very peacefully, for no reason, unmoving. He probably doesn't have any other external conditions. Also like this, unmovingly, then continuously focusing on the clear sky, staring until fatigue develops. After a long time like this, after looking for a long time, his eyes begin to get fatigued. Then in the empty space, because of this reason, in the empty space, he sees chaotic flowers separately. Then separately, he sees in the empty space some chaotic flowers, flowers in space, or what we often call hair-like appearances. And he sees all kinds of chaotic false appearances, seemingly real but false, various horses, elephants. Of course, in Dzogchen practice, there is also this observation relying on sitting posture to observe space, Vajra chains appearing in space, but these are not appearances due to fatigue, nor are they chaotic manifestations. They are the Tathagata Garbha's own original appearances, then through the channels of the eyes appearing in the external space. This principle is mostly found in the seven treasures, and also partially in the Yeshe Lama, then also in other Thogal practices. This is completely different from what's described here. Just now this person is only looking at the cloudless empty sky, just looking and looking. After looking for a very long time, his eyes begin to get fatigued. After getting fatigued, various confused appearances manifest in space, various seemingly real but false confused appearances. Now these appearances, actually, you should know they have no true reality. We often say all myriad dharmas are like hair in empty space. When studying Madhyamaka, this is something our school also greatly values as a teaching. When studying the commentary on the ornament of the middle way, everyone also knows, because the Citamatra school's viewpoint is still very important at certain times, especially when determining conventional truth, the Citamatra school's viewpoint is still very important. Here it explains that these external chaotic appearances are actually chaotic false appearances. various kinds of confused appearances discovered to actually be unestablished. You should know the form aggregate is also like this. Here the Buddha tells Ananda, you should know that the form aggregate among the 5 aggregates, the form aggregate is actually also like this. Originally, according to the Abhidharma Kosha and Gateway to Knowledge, these explain that our form aggregate has 11 types of form. Causal forms are the 4 great elements: earth, water, fire, wind. Then resultant forms are 10 types of form, the 5 sense faculties and 5 objects: form, sound, smell, taste, touch. These also belong to form, plus non-manifest form, altogether 11 types of form. Actually, the 11 forms in the form aggregate are also like this. The form aggregate is also like this. Ananda, these chaotic flowers. Below, the Buddha begins to analyze. When analyzing, he says these chaotic flowers just now do not come from space, do not emerge from the eyes. Actually, when we examine with wisdom these hairs in space, flowers in space just now actually don't come from space and also don't emerge from the eyes. This is very important. Below each one needs to be refuted. Everyone should observe a bit, otherwise sometimes this reasoning method is not very easy to understand. The Buddha tells Ananda, these flowers in space don't come from space and also don't come from the eyes. We all know this. It's neither the eyes nor space, but a confused appearance in between. Thus, Ananda, if they came from space, since they come from space, they should also return to space. He says, Ananda, if these hairs in space, flowers in space came from space, since the place they come from is space, if they came from space, then when they finally enter, they should also return to space, because the place they come from is already established. Space is one place. In this way, wherever they come from should also finally return to that same place. In this way, entering into space. On the surface, it seems coming from space, and going to space might be okay, just like clouds also come from space and go to space. But if there's no truly existing thing saying this is fine, if it's a truly existing thing, then it's definitely not okay. Using this aspect to examine is also possible if there is entering and exiting, because if it truly has exiting and entering, having this means it already has substance, then it would not be space. In this way, it has places of exiting and entering. If the place of exiting doesn't exist and the place of entering also doesn't exist, then there's no substance. This isn't called coming from space, and there's also nothing. Actually, it's completely non-existent, coming from a barren woman's son, coming from rabbit horns. This is the same. If it truly has entering and exiting substance, then having substance means it's not space, because space has no obstruction as its characteristic. If it has obstruction, then it's not space's characteristic. If space is not space, if space doesn't possess space's characteristics, if it has substance, it cannot accommodate the appearance and disappearance of flower characteristics. In this way, the flowers in space just now, the chaotic flowers in space, they themselves cannot, because space fundamentally cannot accommodate what? This space in the middle, coming and going or arising and ceasing, because space already has substance. If space has substance, then within space's substance it's impossible for this flower in space to emerge and then enter into it. Just like as Ananda's body cannot accommodate another Ananda, your body, Ananda, is originally something with substance. If you have substance within Ananda's body, another Ananda appears, then floats in space, and then merges back into Ananda. This is an impossible thing, absolutely impossible. So what you said just now about these flowers in space, if coming from space, this principle is unreasonable. This has already been refuted. If they emerge from the eyes, actually, I feel that for the Shurangama Sutra, people who have studied logic might explain it better. If you haven't studied logic, haven't studied Madhyamaka, just explaining the Shurangama Sutra might not explain it particularly well. Apart from literal explanations, some of its reasoning methods might be very difficult to understand. So in the future, when explaining the Shurangama Sutra at least, I won't say extremely proficient in logic, but at least having passed logic regularly. Only after being able to pass can you explain it properly. If they emerge from the eyes, since they emerge from the eyes, they should return to the eyes. If you say they don't come from space, but these hairs emerge from the eyes in this way, since they emerge from the eyes, then finally they should also return to the eyes. Worldly people often say, falling leaves return to their roots. All dharmas, wherever they come from, finally also return to that place. In this way, since they emerge from the eyes, then finally they can also return to the eyes. The nature of this flower emerges from the eyes. Therefore, in this way, the nature of this flower actually emerges from the eyes. Since it emerges from the eyes, it should have the ability to see. Since it emerges from the eyes, it should have the power to see things. It has this similar cause. This is a kind of reasoning, directly using it through reasoning to make him have to acknowledge. It's not something the other party completely acknowledges. Since this emerges from the eyes, then from the eyes should emerge something of the same type, the same nature. The eyes can see things in this way. It should have the ability to see. Then this flower in space should also have the same ability as the eyes, the function of being able to see other things. If it has the ability to see, when it goes, it becomes a flower in space. When it returns, it should unite with seeing the eye. If it has the ability to see dharmas, then when it goes to space and becomes a flower in space, staying in space for a while, when it finally comes back, when it returns, when it comes back or when it turns back to look, it should also be able to see the eyes. Because it has the function of seeing, then certainly it not only sees many things in space, 看到很多东西, like our telescope looking at the universe, the Milky Way, it can see things, and when it comes back, it should also be able to see what my eye faculty is like. It should be able to see it. If it has no ability to see, if this flower in space, although it emerges from the eyes, but it cannot see things, if it cannot see things, when it emerges, it becomes an obstruction to space. It emerges to space and becomes an obstruction to space. Obstruction means the meaning of blocking, because it cannot see things. If it cannot see things, when it gets to space, it becomes a dharma that covers space. When it returns, it should obstruct the eye. In this way, it covers part of the space. Then when it comes back, it also covers the eyes. Actually, the Buddha's wisdom is still very sharp. I also mentioned a couple days ago, we don't speak of the Buddha having transcendent wisdom, knowing suchness and all phenomena. For us, ordinary worldly people writing papers, such particularly detailed analysis should be very worthy of praise. Some articles that are written very well, people greatly admire the author. Let me meet you. I've read your book. I've seen your such and such book. It's explained particularly well. So through the Shurangama Sutra, we should also have toward the Buddha a rational kind of confidence. We should be able to generate this. If this is the case, then this hair that just emerged from the eyes, if it cannot see things, it is a dharma that should obstruct space. If it obstructs space, it not only obstructs space when it comes back or when it turns back to look, it will also obstruct the eyes. When you see the flower again, the eyes should have no obstruction. In this way, if when you see the flower, our eyes should not have cataracts, because with cataracts you wouldn't be able to see when seeing the flower in this way, because just now the eyes were already obstructed. If your eyes are obstructed when your eyes see the flower, you probably cannot see this flower, but the eyes should have no obstruction. Your eyes should have no such obstacles, if there are no obstacles. How can the clear sky be called clear bright eyes? How can it be called pure space, and also how can it be called pure eyes? Because pure eyes, when there are no obstacles, can see external dharmas. Why do you call them such pure eyes? Why does he call them this way? Therefore you should know that the form aggregate is illusory, fundamentally neither from causes and conditions nor of natural arising. So we should know that all form aggregates are actually illusory, appearing as false appearances. They don't arise from causes and conditions, nor do they arise naturally. They are completely illusory manifestations, just like there's a verse in the Avatamsaka Sutra. If you can remove the eye's cataracts, abandon the perception of form. If you can remove the eye's cataracts, then abandon the perception of form, attachment to form, not seeing the various dharmas, then you attain seeing the Tathagata. Not seeing the various dharmas, actually, this is truly being able to see the Tathagata. The principle explained in the Avatamsaka Sutra is also very much the same as here. So through this method of examination, we should also know that the form aggregate actually is also like hair in space or flowers in space, having absolutely no establishment in essence. It's just that after we sentient beings develop cataracts, we see before us now various kinds of form dharmas. Once our cataracts are removed, then we won't see these truly existing things. At that time, the true Tathagata, if you see me through form, seek me through sound and voice, those people walk the wrong path and cannot see the Tathagata. The reason stated in the Diamond Sutra is also like this. It's not through form that one sees the Tathagata, but should be transcending all elaborations. That is to say, this is the true Dharmakaya. This kind of Dharmakaya is the Tathagata's original face. Okay, today's Shurangama Sutra teaching ends here.
Bandharangara Padmasada Bandharangara Padmasada